Afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear and see me well. If not, Leslie, if you could kindly put in the chat that that's the case. I think we've got a few sort of joining as I speak, but introduce myself. I'm David Herbert, Head of Partnerships at EVC, and I'm here today to host a session on electric vehicle charging, the installation, the maintenance, the process of that to install at sites across the UK. And hopefully we can cover all subjects that people are learning to either understand some sites they're already looking at or how they might be able to tackle electric vehicle charging services moving forward. But the main thing today is to get as much information out of me as you possibly can. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. Leslie will kindly highlight the ones that I may not have answered if there are quite a few at the same time. And yeah, as I said, feel free to sort of ask them as we go. So to introduce myself, Head of Partnerships here at EVC. EVC are an electric vehicle charging operator. So our core focus is to deliver electric vehicle charging points throughout the UK across all sectors. And our key focus is to make that process as simple as possible for both the client and, of course, the end user, the consumer of the charge point, with EVC's tagline being making the EV switch simple. We believe everyone should have access to an EV charging point, and our aim is to provide the largest rollout of fully funded EV charge points, creating access for all across a nationwide network. And I'll talk about some of the statistics that will support that process and how hopefully today we can assist with you joining that revolution. So some history behind EVC. EVC have been in operation for just over 5 years now, where we were the first company to initiate a fully funded rollout across the UK, across all sectors. And due to the early success of around 18 months to 2 years, EVC recently partnered with Denham Capital to receive 165 million to essentially accelerate our goal to roll out 100,000 electric vehicle charge points across the UK. So this will ensure a convenient, practical and sustainable solution, and ensure that when we're partnering with clients, funds, organisations, the EVC will remain a going concern for the duration of our partnership and deliver long-standing solutions in all sectors. As part of Denham Capital, they are a global fund who specialise in renewable energy projects, with EVC being the electric vehicle charging arm of their investment fund. I think it's important to know, I think often we see, certainly more as we progress, electric vehicle charging in the news, in the papers, on the TV, radio. Most sites you go to now have got some form of provision for EV charging. But it's important for people that aren't in the know to understand the projections of our industry and how we as an operator, but also as a country, are looking to manage and maintain the growth levels that we will need to deliver the amount of electric vehicle charging points the public will eventually need long term. So currently on the UK roads, there are around 4% of vehicles that are fully electric. And did you know, as of May 2024, there are now over 1 million fully electric cars on the road. By 2030, there'll be an estimated percentage of EVs will be 30%. So we can see a quite a heavy increase as we work towards the 2035 mandate, whereby the government have initiated a scheme that all vehicles manufactured will be fully electric. So we can see, I don't know if you can see my mouse on the screen, but we can see how that can gradually progress from 2024. So today, car manufacturers are targeted to produce 22% of their vehicles to be a form of electric, scaling up to 2035 to be 100%. And of course, those cars need places and points to charge at. and it's our role and responsibility to make that accessible for the public, whether it be at service stations, hotels, but of course focusing on today's market on commercial property as well. And we often find the use of public networks are becoming more and more prevalent with purchasing electric vehicles. We know that 44% of people can't charge at home. The key reason of that being not having off-street parking. So places such as the workplace or potentially co-working spaces, industrial estates, business parks, where people spend the majority of their working days during the week will be places that we need to charge. And I'm sure that you've got a few sites in mind that this will be benefit from, and we can talk about some of the solutions and how we're going to tackle these challenges moving forward. As I said at the start, if anyone's got any questions at any point, feel free to chuck them in the chat. So a little bit of background about who we work with, so probably some familiar names, but focusing, I think there might be even some people in the presentation today that have had some experience with EVC. I know we've delivered sites for Vickery Holman and a couple of the other organisations that are part of the CPN. But it's demonstrating and showcasing that EVC are an established operator within the UK, working with some leading organisations with a national spread of sites and presence, both from a delivery perspective, but also from a maintenance perspective as well. It's all well and good having charge points installed, but it's often the aftercare that gets forgotten. And part of our success story is ensuring that we have a reliable network, one that clients can install and almost forget about, with EVC taking the management control over that network. So as we've mentioned before, a lot of the UK can't charge at home. The most convenient place to charge would be overnight on your driveway if you have that facility. But 1/3 of your day is spent at work, providing the perfect opportunity to charge at the office. So offering EV chargers at work is a great employee benefit and allows businesses to reach its environmental goals. At EVC, we take pride in working closely with our clients to analyse CO2 emissions, travel costs, and overall operational efficiency, but more importantly, benefits for staff, fleet management operations, and scalable infrastructure. So it's understood today that we've got that 4% of vehicles on the road are electric, and we're working towards that 30% of vehicles by 2030. So we know that demand is going to gradually increase from today to that target. So a real important solution or strategy as part of EVC's development of networks is to ensure that sites have the ability to scale up. We don't need to install hundreds of chargers, 100% occupancy for car parks today. What we need to be able to do is give clients the opportunity to install charge points to meet today's demand, but have the ability to grow their network as more salary sacrifice schemes get introduced, electric cars become more affordable, the second-hand market becomes more accessible, and more staff have the opportunity to charge at their place of work. So why EVC? There are a lot of operators out there, obviously having their own key services and unique solutions. But I'm here to highlight today the benefits of EVC and why we might be different from other operators. So future-proofing your site. I've sort of touched on it in the previous slide there. That scalable infrastructure. It's a real driving factor of EVC's strategy, is to ensure that when organisations are going through a potential tender process or obtaining 3 quotes for a site, that we really think about the future, so you don't have to go through that process again. So we put the infrastructure in to meet today's demand, to allow and enable sites to grow as more people go electric. The ongoing maintenance. We have a nationwide presence, both with internal employed staff, but also partnered with contractors around the UK to help with both proactive and reactive maintenance. And that can be set with different SLAs dependent on the level of severity of issue on site. But EVC have a reliable network. I think the current statistics are around 99.7% uptime on charge points, and maybe there are some electric vehicle drivers in the presentation today. And as you may know, one of the most painful things as part of being an EV driver is turning up to a charge point and it not working. EVC know that, and part of our services and solution is to ensure that ongoing maintenance, the uptime of our network is market leading. When we refer to the scalable solution, the way we lay the infrastructure is from day one. So for example, we can install 2 active charge points for today's demand, but have next to it 4 passive bays. So as and when the demand increases, EVC can come back within sort of a 2 or 3 hour process. A new charge point is installed, meaning we don't have to complete new civil works. We don't have to bring in more power from the grid. The process has been completed from the start. There are also revenue opportunities when we're installing EV charging services. Now, dependent on the type of organization, the type of site, who will be benefiting from the charge points long term, there are many different revenue streams and opportunities for businesses to achieve, essentially. If you're looking at a sole office block that's installing charge points for their staff only, a revenue opportunity probably isn't one of the key driving factors to install. It's probably more about services for staff, ESG credentials, and keeping staff happy whilst they're on site. But if it's, say, for example, an industrial estate where you might be able to put some communal charges for the use of everyone on site, then the landlord can look to generate a revenue opportunity as well. And I can talk about that in a more site-specific opportunity if people have any specific questions. More importantly, it's all great talking about the services, the benefits, the delivery of the charges, but alongside the ongoing maintenance, it's 24/7 support. Round the clock support for clients and customers is a real key factor of why EVC has been so successful in our growth over the last 2 to 3 years. And that's something that we pride ourselves on and will deploy at every site that we install, regardless of the funding. And then finally, market leading technology. So where EVC are a charge point operator, we're not a manufacturer of products. We let the experts do that. We've partnered with a company called Autel, who are a global operator, have delivered tens of thousands of chargers across, I think they're into about 25 different countries now. So we know the product works. It's their roles and responsibilities to always be at the forefront of their own market. And as a beneficiary of that, as one of their sort of suppliers, we can then deploy that on our sites to the end user. I think I've got a couple of questions popping up in the chat now. So if I've got this right, Leslie, from Heidi, is it just plug-in sites you are focusing on? Are you looking into wireless charging? So long term, as new technologies develop, wireless charging being one of them, we will adapt and move towards what is most sustainable, the best fit for a site, what will transfer power quickly to cars. Currently, plug-in sites are our focus, but when that transition changes into other technologies, naturally we will have to adapt. Someone else has had an EV for 9 years and was unable to charge, power cut to site. Yeah, it's great. There are reliable networks out there. Some people will find their sweet spots, certain sites that they can use on the public charging networks. And if we can create a reliable charging sort of destination network where people spend time, then that makes it better for everyone. I don't think I missed any questions. No. So how does it actually work? So EVC take care of the entire process. It can be seen as a bit of a laboured task, or maybe one that people aren't familiar with, being a fairly new industry. But EVC as an operator are here to make that EV switch simple and take care of all of the processes for you. So one of our consultants will speak on behalf of each site and understand what the site needs for their EV charging design. So we need to understand the size of site, the use of site, the people that are spending time there, what their experience for it may be, and then from that process, design a proposal by following the next steps. So EVC will provide a site survey, meaning an engineer will come to your site free of charge to first of all qualify power. We need to ensure that the right power is on site when delivering charge points. We can't have a bank of charge points that aren't delivering the right amount of power. It reduces the customer experience, bad brand, and ultimately would then have to go back to the drawing board and start that process again. But our expert engineers will confirm power availability and recommend the charger types and speed whilst designing your proposal. Then, of course, an EVC agent will run through that proposal with you, ensuring that all aspects of the services are understood, from design stages, types of chargers, support mechanisms, software attached, how the end user pays for their experience. Can I offer free charging for staff? Can I offer free charging for directors or guests, visitors, etc.? And ensure that the proposal designed meets your expectations for the site. Then a funding option will be chosen, which I'll go into a little bit more detail. I think it's either the next slide or the one after. But ultimately, EVC offer two services by way of funding, one being a fully funded operation and one being a client-funded operation. And I'll go into that in a minute. And then finally, the installation. So right through from that consultation stage, right through to the installation and maintenance, EVC will take care of that entire journey, ensuring that basically all the heavy lifting is taken care of by us. Of course, you'll be updated. Project managers will be in touch throughout the process, but essentially to ensure that you've instructed EVC to deliver EV charging, and that's exactly what we'll deliver. And this is typically where most of the questions arise. So again, feel free to jump in the chat with anything that you may have. I think it's worth tackling sort of a bit of an elephant in the room, really. We know that EV charging can be considered expensive, and that's why EVC have come up with some different funding options to essentially enable access to solutions for all. So one being our fully funded solution. So this is where you'll have either visitor bays or unallocated bays, communal bays on a site that can be used on a first come, first served basis by different people, either based on site or attending site for meetings or visits, or even just potentially using some amenities on site. There might be a burger van or drive-through coffee, something like that. And this is where EVC will fund the operation. We will deliver the installation and then pay a rent or a profit share to the client for the benefit of that service. So the client does not have to pay any contribution. They are receiving a revenue share from that service. So it's a free infrastructure with charge points, a warranty throughout the agreement, installed in communal bays, and again, going back to that turnkey solution and full site management to ensure that process is taken care of by us as the operator. And on the flip side of that, we offer a client-funded solution. So this is typically utilized for demised bays where particular companies have their set of bays allocated for their own staff, and they don't want the public or other people or visitors to be able to use them, or they want complete control of the pricing strategies. Then this is the client-funded route. It would probably be best for them. Or we can adopt any existing charge points that may be outdated with inability of software, lack of ability to charge, no portal attached to the charge points, or just simply not working, where EVC can replace and upgrade as well. And those client-funded solutions, as an OZEV accredited installer, you can have access to grants and the grant accessibility will vary dependent on your size of organisation, your size of site, number of parking bays, and number of charge points installed. So every site is different. It all has its own abilities, but an EVC representative will be there to sort of help on the more site-specific queries. We also offer finance options to essentially make it more accessible for organisations to pay on either a monthly or quarterly basis, but still receiving that full turnkey solution and full site management. So regardless of the funding service that is chosen by the client, EVC put the same attention to detail into the service. And then finally, sorry, I'm talking about the adoption of your existing charge points. It will depend on what charge points have been installed and when they were installed, but EVC have the ability to take over the management and essentially bring a network of charge points under one umbrella onto one portal to make it easy to manage your electric consumed, your revenue generated, revenue used, electric miles driven for ESG credentials, and all of the same data that we would use as an operator, our clients can see as well. So agent fees, and this is one of the sort of talking points that was sort of highlighted as a discussion point for the CPN. And there are ways that agents can earn fees through introductions to particular sites. And these can work in many different ways, dependent on the final solution that is chosen by the client, essentially. So we can work on referral fees per site. We can work on referral fees, easy for me to say, referral fees per socket. And those two brackets are typically associated with the fully funded models. We can work on a percentage of the net profits. So that's when a client is investing in their own network. Or some, obviously, property management companies that we work with don't look for a fee, and they're providing a service and retaining a client base, meaning that when you refer EVC to your clients, you know that you're going to get a trusted supplier, one that delivers a service and one that ensures reliability of the network. And again, I can go into a bit more detail, after the presentation on figures and how that might work on a site-by-site basis. But if you've got a certain level of revenue that you need to bill per month, per quarter, per annum, often we can associate our fees towards that as well. But every organisation works differently, and everyone can obviously have their bespoke partnerships. So I'd be happy to talk about that with anyone offline. And now we're getting into a little bit more of the technical aspects. And often when we talk about EV charging, it can be stripped that very simply, but it often comes back to what power is available and what the site requires. But EVC, we deliver all kinds of charge points, varying speeds to ensure that the right chargers are deployed at the right site. So if we start on the left-hand side of my screen here, we've got what's known in the industry as a fast or AC charger, which is a 7 kilowatt to 22 kilowatts, which means it's perfect for a dwell time of somewhere between 2 and 6 hours. Where you'd normally see these charge points deployed would be workplace, office space, residential blocks, hotels, maybe some leisure centres, the likes of David Lloyd, health clubs, where people are spending time with their day. They want to go and leave their car on charge, go and experience whatever they're there to do, and come back to receive a full charge. We can install single or dual outlets. We can install pedestal or wall-mounted units. So regardless of the size, the shape, location of the site, we've got an opportunity to install. We offer multiple payment methods. So typically, a customer, if they become a part of a network, they will have an application that they'll download, and then they can see the usage of their charging experience. But legislation has been released and is actually due to go live on November the 1st, whereby every public-facing charge point must have a contactless payment available, regardless of the speed. Currently, for all you EV drivers out there, you'll know that the rapid charging DC units already have that facility, but thankfully for us as EV drivers, all AC units that are deployed from November must have that credit card system available. So that's your fast and AC charging. Any questions on that, let me know. And then we move over to the DC charging. That's your higher speed chargers, a shorter dwell time of less than an hour. And then we deploy the right speed of charger dependent on the dwell time used on site. So if, for example, it were an industrial estate where you've got vans coming in and out, picking up products, maybe spending 10, 15 minutes, you'd want to try and deploy a high-speed charger there if they were trying to, get a quick charge and move on with the rest of their day. But if you were looking at maybe a conference centre where you've got people travelling for an hour or two, spending an hour or two on site, you might need a lesser speed charge to ensure they get the right amount of power for their dwell time. Again, single dual outlet, smart charging functionality, multiple payment methods. And these are probably the charge points that most of you will recognise in public-facing spaces. But ultimately, we're driven by the type of site and the amount of power that's available. So we've got a scenario asked here. So more applicable to previous slides. Space optimized than these for the tenants when EV charging in their spaces. Just to confirm, I believe that can everyone see the questions that are being asked? Just say, or I can read them out. But on previous slides, in terms of the solutions there, I think. So we've got a scenario here where property management company manages a site on behalf of the client. Spaces are demised in the lease, but the tenants want EV charging in their demised spaces. How exactly could this work in terms of funding? So that would have to be a client-funded solution, whereby typically the landlord would adopt that to install. If not, the tenant can obviously install that dependent on the length of their lease that they have left, and they would then own and manage that charging network for them. If the client doesn't want to outlay, as I said, there are funding available or finance options, but typically for an operator, for complete transparency, to see a return on an investment, we would require a certain amount of hours used per day. So if the charge points are demised for a smaller pool of personnel, it would have to be owned by the client. And then would the infrastructure have to be adopted by the client, or do you take back the equipment? No, the equipment would always stay on site. If we're talking about let's say again an office space whereby a tenant has left and the EV charge points have been left on site, that then creates an additional service for marketability of the property. We're often finding at the moment where we have got larger office space buildings and not necessarily struggling to rent the space, but maybe the property's been on available for longer than maybe they would have liked. We're often seeing that adding EV charge points is a request from potential tenants moving forward. So, for example, I will move into your property if your building is EV ready. So we can help as part of that process as well. I believe I covered probably the key points of the different charging speeds, but ultimately what you've got to think of is who goes to the site and how long do they spend there, and then work backwards with the right charger types. But evidently EDC can offer a complete range, And even on some sites, we can offer a hybrid of charging speeds, because each site will be different and require its bespoke services. Software is a key part of the management moving forward. Obviously, as property management companies, often reliable to maintain revenue reports, reconciliation, and when adding EV charging to a site, that's no different. But EVC, both from a customer perspective and a client perspective, make that service as simple as possible. So if we start on the left with our application, and this is what will be used by the end user. Now, this can be used to log into your account, pay for your charging session, monitor your charging session to see how many kilowatts have been charged, and then a notification will be sent once your electric vehicle has been charged. Now, with your electric vehicle anyway, you do have those facilities in your own application. So if you had an Audi EV, you'd have that on your application if you set it up. But EVC software can integrate with that and give you those in-depth statistics and benefits as an EV member. Additionally, here we do also have our live map. So if you are out and about looking for charge points, EVC can have our live network on a nationwide basis. And then probably more importantly, from your perspective today, the EVC portal, so the management of those charge points. So we provide the exact same data that EVC look at to monitor our own networks back to our clients as well. So asset performance data, tariff management, it's a client account portal, and then carbon reduction reporting. I'm not sure you can quite see the details on the screen there, but I can share the presentation after, and it'll give you a bit of an overview of the kind of data that you can see on there. And that's often a case that we do demonstrations. We can give sort of dummy logins for people to have a play about before their site goes live, just to get a feel of what's available to them, what data they can access. And where EVC develop our software internally, often we get feedback from clients to say, actually, I'd quite like to see this on my portal. Is that possible? And we can also add that to our designs as well. Additionally, where we see the data within the portal will also demonstrate not only how often the charge points are being used, but it also helps us plan for the future. So when we go back to the start and we're talking about working towards 2030 and 30% growth of EVs on our roads, the portal will show us how often the charge points are used, and then we can forecast when the next charge points are to be installed as well. So loads of different ways that the data can be analysed to benefit not only the customer, but also the client as well. And then we talk about the maintenance and aftercare. So EVC are a UK-based operation. We have a UK customer care team around the clock to ensure EV drivers have the best possible charging experience. One of the most common calls that we get is that the charge point is locked to their car, and it's often a new EV driver. So if any of you are thinking about going electric, you're probably going to do this the first time you go to a public charge point, because I know I did. If you can't disconnect your cable from your car, it's probably because your car's locked. So just a quick tip on that one. But we have 24-hour on-site response time. So in the unlikely event that you're having issues with the chargers, our engineers will be on site within 24 hours to ensure they're back up and running. It goes back to one of those points I highlighted earlier with our reliability of services. We've got a nationwide team of engineers, partners, some subcontractors to ensure essentially our brand reputation is held strong, charge points are accessible, and our service is second to none. Once the charge points are installed, you're going to need a dedicated account manager, and they're there available to promptly answer any questions or queries that may arise. The most common asked questions are about the revenue reports, to be fair, when questions could arise about the usage, but any sort of ranging from when can I install my next charger, or there's some new legislation that's just been released. What does that mean for me? Your dedicated account manager will be there to assist. Within the portal, we have our carbon savings tracker. So when you're working for scope 3 emissions, your ESG goals, all of our data will be able to help you monitor and forecast those sort of situations. Automatic billing solution. So we take care of all of the billing and management. So it goes back to that sort of turnkey solution element. It really is for a property manager. We know how busy your day-to-day activities are, and by adding another service to your properties, it can sometimes be seen as another administration task. Well, that's not the case. We pride ourselves on lifting, doing all the heavy lifting, making sure that those account managers are looking after you, so you can get on with your day-to-day business. And then the client and revenue portals to gain access to your client portal for in-depth charging statistics and revenue tracking. Now, I just want to talk about a couple of case studies, because a lot of information that I've sort of talked about before, and no doubt loads of questions are sort of running through your head. But how does that actually translate into a real life example? And one of the good examples I thought would be to talk about today with the audience that we've got is BizSpace. So EVC partnered with BizSpace, I think it must have been about 12 months ago now, to complete a rollout of charge points across their UK estate. Typically at BizSpace, the dwell times are around 2 to 8 hours. So we've installed that AC fast charging unit. So they're a dynamic portfolio of co-working offices. I think most of you be aware of the brand. We've now equipped, I think we've done about 30 locations already installed, and it will be 70 by the end of the process. But we went through a strategic planning. We assessed the power requirements, the layout for each site, how many co-working spaces there were, the expected number of people to be on site at any one time. And each site was slightly different, making sure that we've deployed the right chargers from day one, going back to that scalability factor of being able to increase that as demand naturally increases over the years, not just with EVs coming onto site, but actually BizSpace being recognised as a destination to host meetings with clients and offer EV charging services. BizSpace went down the fully funded solution. So that's an entire investment from EVC to allow BizSpace to invest in either other sites or improving their spaces. And then that ongoing maintenance and operations, we maintain and manage the entire network on a day-to-day basis. And then finally, to sort of end the brochure, the slides get started today. You can scan that code, or we can share the document at the end of today on future-proofing your development. So yeah, I hope I was able to cover some of the key sort of points that were advised to talk about today. I try not to be too technical, but if anyone has got any more specific questions that they want to chuck in the chat, please feel free. Often find that there'll be questions that would definitely benefit others that are listening. But most importantly, I hope, if you did anything, at least learn one thing today. And thank you for your time. And if you want me to go back to any of the slides in particular, again, let me know.